This is a what's in my camera bag as of the 3rd of March 2025 video. It should be camera bags because I shoot in a variety of environments, from streets, city, travel, the coast, the outdoors, hiking, all of these types of places, and I carry different equipment depending on what I'm doing, what my goals are. Maybe if I'm doing a little bit of video in addition to photography, and that will influence what I'm packing and how much my back will ache the next day, potentially. So let's get into this, starting with, drum roll, my camera bags. And for this, we're going to jump to a wider lens so I can fit them in. Right now I've got a super wide lens on. You can see nearly everything in this corner of my office. I'm going to show you my camera bags. They're going to look kind of massive if I put them to this side with a 14mm lens, but here we go. So the tried and tested carry everything bag here is the Lowepro Whistler 450 AW2, I want to say. This isn't a review video, so I'm not going to be going over the kind of specifics of everything, but just showing you what I use and how it works for me. So this bag, I can carry everything in this bag nearly. Very few occasions where I need to take another bag. My tripod can sit on the side. 2 bodies, 3/4 lenses, a drone, some clothes and everything. So this is a great bag for if you need to carry a lot of stuff. It's not particularly light, but that's because it's solid and it protects my gear, and this is my kind of go-to for any harsh environments or just anything that's testing, and it's a great bag. It's really deep, as you can tell, so a lot of your lenses can kind of just stand up this way, and it's rear access. So yeah, great option. Moving on to bag 2. This is a Lowepro ProTactic 350 AW2. It does say on the back. Popularized by the great Peter McKinnon himself back in the day, before he's launched those Gomatic bags, which I'm actually thinking about maybe replacing this one with, but we'll get to that. This works my day-to-day. I can carry 2 bodies, 3 lenses comfortably in this, and maybe some room for spare batteries, filters, whatnot. And not much else, but that's kind of decent for a daily carry effort or travel where I'm not packing lots of stuff. And if I'm just doing photo and no video, this is usually the bag that I'll go for. Then we have my, I'm going to remember models of everything now, my Wandrd Rogue sling, which is a 9-litre, I want to say. This is typically when I'm taking 2 cameras, 2 lenses, street photography. That's the kind of setup that I like for that. But you can pack a 70 to 200 and another lens in this with one camera in there as well. So it's quite spacious and it's pretty good for that. And there's actually an expandable slot that you can put a laptop or an iPad in this one as well, which is why I use it. So for example, I'm going to London for a few days, in a couple of days, and I'll probably just pack this bag, 1 camera, 3 primes, good to go. So yeah, it's really handy and small and low profile. It doesn't really look like a camera bag. Oh, I don't think it does. This is the 14mm f1.8 G Master Prime lens. As you can see, it's quite different. It's got this really bulbous front element built on lens hood. But this lens is just another example of Sony's innovation. It's so small and light for what it is. They have just released a 16mm f1.8 G lens. I've not used many G lenses. When I haven't really seen this huge difference between G and G Master. I'm intrigued by that lens because it will allow filters on the front, which this lens doesn't. So this is my ultra wide prime, which is my least used lens. I kind of call it a special circumstances lens because it really is for that. In scenarios where it works, it really does. But in day-to-day kind of shooting, it's far too wide for my typical stuff. But yeah, it's not an inconvenience to pack in my bag, given it's that small. It does have a strange lens hood because of the way the front element is designed. But yeah, it's just an awesome bit of kit. And when the Milky Way is out in the summer, I think this will be getting some use. This is my 24mm f1.4 G Master lens, and it's absolutely tiny, and I love this lens. It's a real scene and subject storyteller. It's my kind of go-to when I want to just fit more stuff in a sort of comfortably wide. Anything wider than 24 starts to feel very wide for me and awkward for some things. But yeah, I love this lens, and I pair it with my 50mm lens, and those two together for me are my favorite approach to photography. 24 and 50, nothing else, and I just absolutely love the combination of how those two lenses look together. This for scene and subject, 50 for more for the subject, or depending on what I'm shooting, but I just find they complement each other very well for my style of photography. And I nearly always mention when talking about this that I find most people do prefer 35-85, but for me it's this 24-50 combo that takes the W. This is potentially the best lens on earth for me personally. It's a 50mm prime lens, f1.2 G Master. It's so small and light relative to what it is. If you compare the Canon or Nikon versions, they're significantly bigger and heavier, and this is where just another reason that Sony kind of have me using their equipment by choice, because it just makes sense when they can make this lens this size. 50mm is my favorite focal length, though paired with 24, as I mentioned previously. I think if I was one lens for life, it probably would be a 35, which I currently don't own, which is a bit weird to say that, but that's because of this 24-50 pairing that I prefer to use. So yeah, I love this lens, and there's oftentimes this goes on my camera and I don't take it off and I just shoot all day with this, and that's for everything. Landscape, street, portraits, of course dogs. I like to take photos of dogs because, well, they're just more important than people sometimes. So yeah, this is my most used lens. I think it probably always will be, especially again paired with 24. That I have to add that as well. So yeah, 50, 1.2, love it. Oh, and 1.2, it just... The 70-200 2.8 version 2, my only zoom lens. I am not a big fan of zoom lenses in general. I find they make me a little bit lazy and I don't work so hard for my compositions. So that's why everything under this is a prime lens. But within this range, the only other option is a 135, which feels like a dedicated portrait lens to me. I have used one and it's great. But the versatility does come in for me at this focal length, especially on a mountaintop or in a place where I can't walk to reframe my shot or change my shot in that sense. This zoom ring comes in very handy. Yeah, I like to shoot landscape with this. Of course, a bit of wildlife. I mean, it's a bit difficult with a 50 or a 24. Definitely on the coast. And I find myself using this lens a little bit more since moving to Pembrokeshire because of things on the coast, especially walking cliff tops, being able to, oh, there's a seal, somebody surfing, that type of thing. It's getting more and more use. And I almost think about, oh, I could maybe use a 400, but I don't think I need to. So yeah, this is the version 2, which is significantly lighter than the first version. I had that as well. It performs better, but they both performed great to me. I just, I think it's a 500 gram difference, and for somebody with a herniated disc, that's good. So yeah, I opted for the newer, lighter version. My main camera is a Sony A7RV. As you can see, it's currently kitted out a little bit with the three-legged thing L bracket and then three-legged thing Peak Design clip adapter, which I'm really enjoying having on this camera at the minute. But getting to the camera, I think this is the best camera for me once again. I don't need blazing frames per second on an A1 or A9 III or an R5 or Z9. I don't need that's just not my photography, and therefore something really high resolution with incredible autofocus is fantastic for me, and it's overkill for most of the things I shoot. But the user experience of this camera is very nice. It has a really nice EVF, a really cool LCD that flips and twists in every direction, which I'm sure all cameras will have at some point because that's just so innovative and good. And the size, it's really small for what it is, especially again if you compare it to other brands' cameras. What this does for the size of the camera is kind of wild. I've got a cage on this at the minute, but just relative to my hand, we can see. And yeah, it is my favorite camera, and I can't see me changing this in the foreseeable future unless something makes me. My second camera, or B camera, or whatever you want to call it, is a Sony A7IV. This isn't even it. It's currently filming me, and I just thought, what's the point in switching when they look very similar? It's an A7IV. It's a 33 megapixel full frame decent hybrid camera. I probably could use it for everything I do. I just decided to splurge on the A7R5. It's great. I think bang for buck, it's probably the best camera I've used. And that is comparing it against other brands, other Sonys, whatnot. I still think it's a fantastic camera. I do hear some information about an A7V coming out this year. I'd be very intrigued to know what that might feature. Maybe just lending some of the features from its big brother cameras. I wonder how many of those features. But yeah, that will have to be a significant upgrade for me to consider switching my A7 IV for it, especially as it's my second camera. But I can shoot everything with just that camera. So yeah, that pretty much sums up why it goes in my bag. I have to show you this. This is my Ricoh GR3 X HDF. What does that mean? The GR3 is the model of the camera. The X is the fact that it has a 40mm equivalent lens. The HDF means it has a built-in highlight diffusion filter. Highlight diffusion filter, which you press a button to turn on and off. It's tricked out with some bits from Square Hood, that being the Square Hood glass here, and the Square Hood brass thumb grip. These two items make it a little nicer to hold, but if you do remove this, it's seriously pocketable. Let's get it to focus. I just like the hood personally, which I can't get back on. There we go. And this is I should mention, my fourth camera bag that I might use for this. It's a 1 litre Patagonia bum bag, fanny pack, whatever you want to call it. And this goes in here as a daily carry. I've been shooting more and more with this camera recently. It has super slow autofocus. It doesn't take many frames per second. It's a bit old tech really now, but I love it because I don't feel like I'm carrying anything, and I'm still a photographer. Not really much of a photographer without a camera on me, so having this with me has changed the way I take photos and the frequency to which I take photos. So I love it for those reasons, and if a GR4 comes out, I'd be very curious to know about it. I feel like I should insert a part about why I shoot Sony cameras, with the exception of the little Rico. I had a Canon 5D Mark IV in 2019, it might have been 20. I could check, but it is what it is. At the time, Sony were just innovating and leading in this mirrorless transition that all camera companies have followed since. And when I used an A7 III and A7R3 against my 5D Mark IV, it just felt like this new world of tech, and I just jumped over immediately, zero regrets. And then I continued to use Sony, and I saw the other camera companies get better and kind of copy what Sony was doing or follow their innovation. And now it seems to me there's significantly less difference between the big brands, Sony, Nikon or Nikon, and Canon. Other than the size of the cameras, I've used an R5, I've used very recently used a Z9 a little bit. They feel great, and they seem to be doing what the Sony is doing. Arguably they might feel a little bit nicer in the hand in some scenarios, but they're so big and chunky that for me, a guy that wants to throw my gear in a backpack, get around with it, transport it, move it, it just makes perfect sense for me to continue to use Sony, because I can't see any reason that I'd want to use bigger, bulkier, heavier equipment, especially if you compare the 50mm that I mentioned. Maybe if you're shooting in a studio all day long, it might be nicer to have that extra grip in your hands, but I mean, you could just add a battery grip to this if you really want that. Some people have an issue with the pinky going underneath the Sony. I've got used to it. It feels a little bit weird at first, but it's just default for me now. That's where my little finger is, and I'm fine with it. I mean, the fact that that makes it smaller to fit in my bag is a huge plus for me. The A7R5 does have an improved grip over other Sonys for people who haven't used one yet, where your fingers don't bump into the lens like they might on the older cameras. So I think that's worth pointing out. And yeah, they've continued the innovation, things like the AI autofocus. They seem to be implementing these things first and then the other camera companies following. So there's two ways to look at that. You could look at it like when those that do it second or after refine things and get them better, or those that lead are doing that. So yeah, I shoot Sony. I think for the foreseeable future I will. I enjoy using other cameras, but I haven't used another camera yet that's made me think, oh, I need to change all my stuff. I'd welcome that moment. Maybe I wouldn't, because it'd be quite expensive. Let's not go there. I don't think that is going to happen, based on what I have used and what I think will be created or released, shall we say. So yeah, that covers my why I shoot Sony section in a very vague but true reflection. Tripods. Now, I don't use a tripod very often in day-to-day photography. Obviously, street photography things I don't use tripods because I can't even imagine how. I can't imagine how that would go, but I don't think nobody does that. So I use tripods in scenarios where I need to use them, and I do depend on them for a certain number of things that I shoot. Sometimes I shoot brown work where I'm both sides of the camera. It's a kind of challenging thing to do, but I always use a tripod when I'm doing this. Other times I use a tripod when I need to for shutter speed reasons, or sometimes it allows me to get more dialed in on composition and really focus on the shot. That's when I use a tripod. This is Winston by Three Legged Thing, and I bought this tripod in 2019, and it's the current oldest piece of camera equipment that I own. So the significance of a tripod in that you'll replace everything else, perhaps multiple times before you replace a tripod, is something of note and worth investing in a decent tripod. Now this is carbon fiber, it's big, it extends to way above my head. I've taken shots with this where I've used my 14mm lens and people have asked if they're a drone shot because of the perspective. That's why I love this tripod. And then I should mention that this Winston is the 1.0, and I've actually been chatting with Three Legged Thing recently, who sent me Winston 2.0, who is the upgraded version. I actually went for the all black model, which looks very nice if you ask me. And I'm currently testing out and using this new version, which is very, very nice. Again, monster height on this tripod, which I really like. Super solid, sturdy, strong tripod. I also have another Three Legged Thing tripod, which again is new, and this is going to be my travel option. This is Brian, who's also carbon fiber, and whilst Brian does fold up quite small in comparison to Winston, he actually stands really tall as well. I might maybe put some stuff on that here, because me saying tall is not going to help you too much. I'm 5'8", Celtic height, short in other words, and this thing goes way above where I can see. So yeah, you need to be 6+ to be at full extension and looking through the viewfinder, or I need to stand on the box, one or the other. So yeah, this is my travel option, which comes in this new green and black, which is really, really nice. Tripods, done. I have a drone, okay, here it is next. No, I have a weird relationship with drones. This is my Air 2S, which I think in the drone nerd world is relatively old now. I actually flew it the other day after getting the dust off. And based on where I live now, I might look for a new drone, because there are some really cool places that I can shoot, like just quite relaxed and quiet, nobody around. It sounds a bit weird that, but anyway, that's how I like to use a drone. And yeah, it's an Air 2S. I shoot some stuff with it. Here are some photos with it, and I don't know what else to say, but I have one and people ask me about it, and there it is. Okay, next. Filters. These are the Helix Maglock filters in connection with, obviously made by PolarPro, but in connection with Peter McKinnon, if you can see here, and Chris Burkhardt. That's the polarizer. I have the polarizer, the VND 2 to 5 and 6 to 9. Obviously the VNDs are for video. These are fantastic if I'm shooting photography and video, because you can switch them back and forth so easily, so quickly. They're kind of big and heavy, and they make you put an 82mm adapter on the end of all of your lenses, which is extreme with the 24, for example. But the convenience of being able to switch polarizer to VND is worth the weight and size of them if you're in a scenario where you do need to chop and change filters. So yeah, they're great if you need to do those things. Other than that, I use polarizers, one on my 50, one on my 24, and yeah, I mean, they speak for themselves. I use them when there is glare to deal with. Water, metallic surfaces, cars, something shiny, something where the bright, harsh light is affecting part of my photo, pop one of these on, give it a twist, cancel out a great extent of that bright light in the photo. Can't live without them. Mist filters. I own two. One is a half strength, it's very strong and probably too strong. And the other is a 1/8, which is currently on this 24 because I find it's quite nice on a face that needs to be made a little bit nicer. And man-made lights, they work quite well on. There's probably a little glow coming off this thing, which would, oh, actually it's magnetic, which, let's take it off. So here we go. There's Beauty and the Beast. There you go, Beast, Beauty, there we go. That's why I like a mist filter, full confession. I have an action camera, it's a DJI Osmo 4. I don't use it a lot. I've recorded a POV video to share with you guys soon, shooting on both the coast and Tenby, a town near to home. Maybe I'll post that next. Here it is. Nothing else to say about this thing. There's a new one, a 5. It's supposedly better, but for the extent to which I use it, not even interested in looking at upgrading it. So yeah, Osmo Action 4. Film cameras, I own 3. A Ricoh, you can tell how much I use them. Ricoh 500G, which is a 40mm f2.8 fixed film camera. It's really cool to pair with my other Ricoh because they're both the same sort of lens. I'll be honest, the lens is a bit soft, but it's so tiny it's nice to take on holidays and stuff like that. I have a Yashica Electro 35G, which is one of the most beautiful looking cameras I think ever created. Fortunately, there's a slight issue with this one at the minute to do with the oh, listen to it as well. Oh, I love it. Anyway, there's a slight issue with that, which I need to get fixed. Then there is this camera, which is probably my favorite camera and will always be my favorite camera because there's a cool story to it. My mum bought my dad this camera for his 18th birthday. And there are some photos of me as a young whippersnapper from this camera. And it's really cool that my dad gave it to me. I have a 24, 50 and 135 lenses for it. The 24 lens is great, the others not so good. And yeah, it's my favorite camera for that reason, but I'm a little careful with it. So yeah, film cameras covered as well. I said I'd give mention to what camera gear I take, where and when and how, which might help you with your decision making. So I'll do this super quick now. If I'm shooting street photography, it's 24, 50, 95% of the time. Might be the same for travel if I'm not hiking, or I can't think of situations where the 70 to 200 might come in handy. If I just have space, sometimes I might put the 14 in, and sometimes it might just sit in a safe in the hotel and I won't use it at all. But there might be a scenario where it comes in handy and I think, I'm glad I own that lens now. But I wouldn't care if I didn't take it with me. I will occasionally take a drone, but I'm really not bothered if I don't as well. If I'm shooting cars, I like to have primarily 50 and 70 to 200. The 24 will come in handy for interior or certain specific shots where you can't really see that distortion that comes in when you start shooting wider than 50 or 35 with cars. That's just my preference. Again, the 70-200 I love to shoot cars with to get a bit of compression in if the environment's nice. Landscape, I don't really kind of go out just to do landscape, although it does happen from time to time. If it's local, I just pack everything in my big bag and just carry it. If I have to be mindful and I'm hiking or something like that, this is where I would think about getting a 35. I would love to have 14, 35, 70 to 200 for hikes. For me, I think that would be fantastic. And again, I don't love zoom lenses, but the ones I would think about, the 28 to 70 f2 sounds like an incredible lens for work. Just because I think I could shoot jobs with just that lens and nothing else. The 24 to 50 f2.8 also sounds like a great lens for me, but you can guarantee that I just use it 24 or 50 because it's small and versatile. The 24 to 70 f2.8, whilst I understand what this lens is for, I've owned them in the past and I kind of find the photography experience boring with them for artistic or creative stuff or stuff for myself. I don't really know why. I just kind of stood there zooming to get frames rather than working around to get them, which is how I prefer to make photos. But I understand the 24 to 70 for a workhorse lens, I absolutely do. And scenarios where you can't change your lens. So I'm not bashing those lenses like they're bad, but they're suited to different approaches. That's my take on it. And long lenses, they're great fun, but I wouldn't use them enough. the 300 2.8 prime. I'd love to maybe I would like one of those, especially when the puffins come to Skomer Island in a couple of months. That would be awesome, but let's not think about that because it's quite expensive. So talking about equipment makes me think about equipment. So yeah, that covers my cameras, my bags, my tripods, my lenses, the drone, film cameras, why not, filters. Maybe I could throw a couple of miscellaneous items in that I sometimes have in my camera bag because they occasionally come in handy. A few miscellaneous items, one being a light. This is a small rig something light. I don't know what it's called, but it can be handy. An SSD, some spare memory cards. I use a combination of CF Express and SD for whatever reason. And because of those, I always take one of these with me, which is a USB-C to USB-C. That allows me to plug my camera in to my Mac or my iPad when I haven't got a CF Express adapter. Yeah, I can't run into that scenario if this is always in my bag. The rocket blower, I have a couple of these. I always take one of these, especially now I live in a place where I'm on the beach quite a lot and that sand gets in everywhere. Yeah, this is great. A cloth, I'm just using sunglasses cloth. I don't promote brands, so we'll keep it this way. A pocket knife, I always take a pocket knife. This is just standard for me. And this is a little one on my shelf, just grabbed off my shelf, but here I have quite a few, but we don't need to get into those. Honorable mentions. So whilst this is all about photography primarily, recently I've discovered anamorphic lenses for video and I am obsessed. So I have two currently that Sirui have sent to me. I've posted a video with this one. This is the 1.6 times anamorphic full frame manual. Absolutely love it. So you get 50mm top to bottom and 33mm side to side. It's such a cool aspect ratio. And then this one is the autofocus APS-C 40mm. So I've been shooting it at, it would be 60, 1.33 times. I'm shot some stuff to post with this very soon as well. And honorable mentions we'll call these two lenses. I intend to shoot quite a bit more with this one, and I'd be quite interested to maybe get a 35 as well. So we will see. Obviously I'll show some footage from these. Yes, they're great. Thanks for watching the What's in My Camera Bag. I've wanted to make one of these videos for a while. I get asked by quite a few people, especially on my Instagram, what equipment I use, and now I can perhaps refer them to this video if they want some specific details about all of it. It feels like a bit of a painful video to do in the sense that I'm just going like this, like for the whole thing, but I guess it's the easiest way to get it done. I hope that any of this helped you with your decision making on equipment. If you do have questions, feel free to ask them to me in the comments here or my Instagram, wherever you want, and I will do my best to answer them all, at least from my perspective and in what works for me. I've used loads of other lenses that I currently don't own or use just by trial and error, so I might be able to help you there also. And I will wish you a good day, and it looks like I'm going to get out to shoot sunset on the coast once again because the forecast is looking very nice. So wish me luck, and I will hopefully share those photos soon.